I say that a house divided against itself cannot stand. Does Judge Douglas say that it can stand? I don't know whether he does or not. The judge does not seem to be attending to me just now, but I would like to know if it is his opinion that a house divided against itself can stand. Of somewhat higher character. Now, my friends, I ask your attention to this matter for the purpose of saying several things seriously. I know that the judge may readily agree with me in the maxim which was put forth by the Savior, but he may allege that I misapply it. And the judge has a right to urge that in my application I do misapply it, and I have a right to show that I do not. When he undertakes to say that because I think this nation, so far as the question of slavery is concerned, will become all one thing or all the other, and I am in favor of bringing about a dead uniformity in the various states and all their institutions, he argues erroneously. The great variety of the local institutions in the states, springing from the differences in the soil, differences in the face of the country and in the climate, are bonds of union. They do not make a house divided against itself, but they make a house united. If they produce in one section of the country what is called for by the wants of another section, and this section can supply the wants of the first, they are not matters of discord, but matters of union. True bonds of union. But can this question of slavery be considered as one of these varieties in the institutions of the country? I leave it to you to say whether in the history of our government this institution of slavery has not always failed to be a bond of union, and on the contrary has been an apple of discord, an element of division in the House. I ask you to consider whether, so long as the moral constitution of men's minds shall continue to be the same after this generation and assemblage shall sink into the grave, and another race shall rise with the same moral and intellectual development as we have, whether if that institution is standing in the same irritating position in which it is now, it will not continue to be an element of division. If so, then I have a right to say, in regard to this question, the Union is a house divided against itself. And when the judge reminds me that I've often said to him that the institution of slavery has existed for 80 years in some states, yet it does not exist in others, I agree to the fact, and I account for it by looking at the position in which our fathers originally placed it, restricting it from the new territories where it had not gone, and legislating to cut off its source by the abrogation of the slave trade, thus putting the seal of legislation against its spread. The public mind did rest in the belief that it was in the course of ultimate extinction, but lately, and in this I charge nothing on the judge's motives, lately I think that he and those acting with him have placed that institution on a new basis, which looks to the perpetuity and nationalization of slavery. And while it is placed on this new basis, I say, and I have said, that I believe we shall not have peace upon the question until the opponents of slavery arrest the further spread of it and place it where the public and mind shall rest in the belief that it is in the course of ultimate extinction, or, on the other hand, that its advocates will push it forward until it shall become alike and lawful in all the states, old as well as new, north as well as south. Now I believe if we could arrest the spread and place it where the Washington and Jefferson and Madison placed it, it would be in the course of ultimate extinction, and the public mind would, as for 80 years past, believe that it was in the course of ultimate extinction. The crisis would be past, and the institution might be let alone for 100 years, if it should live so long in the states where it exists. Yet, it would be going out of existence in the way best for both the black and the white races. When I made my speech at Springfield, of which the judge complains, and from which he quotes, I was not really thinking of the things he ascribes to me at all. I had no thought in the world that I was doing anything to bring about a war between the free and the slave states. I had no thought in the world that I was doing anything to bring about a political and social equality of the black and the white races. It never occurred to me that I was doing anything or favoring anything to reduce a dead uniformity at all local institutions of the various states. But I must say, in all fairness to him, if he thinks I'm doing something which leads to these bad results, it is none the better that I did not mean it. It is just as fatal to the country if I have any influence in producing it, whether I intend it or not. But can it be true that placing this institution upon the original basis, the basis upon which our fathers placed it, can have tendency to set the northern and southern states at war with one another, or that it can have a tendency to make the people of Vermont raise sugar cane because they raise it in Louisiana, or that it can compel the people of Illinois to cut pine logs on the Grand Prairie, where they will not grow, because they cut pine logs in Maine, where they do grow. The judge says this is a new principle started in regard to this question. Does the judge claim that he is working on the plan of the founders of the government? I think he says in some of his speeches that he saw evidence of a policy to allow slavery to be south of a certain line, while north of it should be excluded. And he saw an indisposition on the part of the country to stand upon that policy. And therefore he set about studying the subject upon original principles. And upon original principles he got up the Nebraska bill. I am fighting it upon these original principles, fighting it in the Jeffersonian, Washingtonian, and Madisonian fashion. When the Southern people tell us they are no more responsible for the origin of slavery than we, I acknowledge the fact. When it is said that the institution exists and that it is very difficult to get rid of it in any satisfactory way, I understand and appreciate the same. I will surely not blame them for not doing what I should not know how to do. If all earthly power were given to me, I should not know what to do as to the existing institution. My first impulse would be to free all the slaves and send them to Liberia, to their own native land. But a moment's reflection would convince me that whatever of high hope, as I think there may be to this, in the long run, its sudden execution is impossible. If they were all landed there in a day, they would perish in the next 10 days, and there are not surplus shipping or supplies or money enough in the world to carry them there. What then? Free them all and keep them among us as underlings? Is it quite certain that this betters their condition? I think I would not hold one in slavery at any rate, yet the point is not clear enough to me to denounce upon you. What next? Free them and make them politically and socially our equals? My own feelings will not admit of this. And if mine would, we well know that those of the great mass of white people will not. Whether this feeling accords with justice and sound judgment is not the sole question, if indeed it is any part of it. A universal feeling, whether well or ill-founded, cannot be safely disregarded. We cannot then make them equals. It does not seem to me that our system of gradual emancipation might be adopted. But for their tardiness in this, I will not undertake to judge our brethren of the South. The next thing I will ask your attention to is the judge's comments upon the fact, as he assumes it to be, that we cannot call our public meetings Republican meetings. He instances Tazewell County as one of the places where the Friends of Lincoln have called a public meeting and not dared to call it a Republican meeting. He instances Monroe County as another place where Judge Trumbull and Jehu Baker address the persons whom the judge assumes to be the Friends of Lincoln, calling them the Free Democracy. I have the honor to inform Judge Douglas that he spoke in that very county of Tazewell last Saturday, and I was there on Tuesday last. And when he spoke under a call not venturing to use the word Democrat. What do you think of this? So again, there's another thing to which I'll ask the judge's attention. In the contest of 1856, his party delighted to call themselves together as the National Democracy. But now, if there should be a notice put up anywhere for a meeting of the National Democracy, Judge Douglas and his friends would not come. They would not suppose themselves invited. They would understand that it was a call for those hateful postmasters whom he talks about. Now I'll pass to consider a couple of more follies of the judges. The judge is woefully at fault about his friend Lincoln being a grocery keeper. I don't know if it would be a great sin if I had been, but he's mistaken. Lincoln never kept a grocery anywhere in the world. It is true that I did work the latter part of one winter in a little still house up at the head of a hollow. And so I think my friend the judge is equally at fault when he charges me at the time when I was in Congress of having opposed our soldiers who were fighting in the Mexican War. The judge did not make his charge very distinctly, but I can tell you what he can prove by referring to the record.